We've never been this way before. This way, this journey forward, this exploration of health in such fashion. I was challenged by two people. One was a dear friend, and the other a stranger. The stranger asked to me at an event that I was speaking at, what about women's health when it comes to artificial intelligence? Who are the people that are building these innovative products and platforms for me when it comes to my health as a woman? Who is building the AI? As deep as we know that artificial intelligence is becoming in many different verticals, in health, it is a game changer. We've come to unpack this today on several different fronts, for several different verticals, with several different leaders from around the world. Welcome to GatherVerse Women's Health Summit 2025, which we're looking forward to having GatherVerse Men's Health Summit later on this year, scheduled. We're happy to see so many of you that have come to rendezvous with us again. We're streaming and multi-broadcasting from around the world and restreaming at different streams. We meet at the intersection of emerging technologies and humanity with a distinct focus, having one global conversation at a time on accessibility and education, equality, community development, safety, privacy, wellness, ethics, care, compassion, and more. We've now done this over 30 times, these GatherVerse Global Virtual Summits. And in many ways, we feel like we just began. There's a lot to unpack. We want you to tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a colleague, share this free event that's being produced. When I think about health and wellness, an area and a subject that we've covered greatly, but not enough, there's still so much more before AI even arrived that we didn't know. Now, there's even more that we don't know. But what happens, as I said before, now that it's come to pass, what happens when the technology becomes more advanced than the technologist? This has happened. But what happens when the technology becomes more advanced than the health practitioner? Is that possible? That's a very thin line. There are things we need to know. The stranger who challenged me and asked me in front of many people, what about women's health? And to my dear friend who said, Christopher, we need to understand more about women's health in this AI era of emerging technologies. I challenge you to present this to the global GatherVerse community. It's challenge accepted, graciously. Prepare for our next roundtable discussion. It will go by fast, all of this. 2 days. And we have the opportunity to do it together. May our gather be well. And greetings, roundtables, panelists. Greetings, GatherVerse community. We come to you today ready to explore We're different leaders from around the world, voices, human hearts, that have come to assemble with us today. Panelists, I would ask that you please mute your mics until called upon. We have a lot to be able to go round robin. There's a lot to express. It's great to see so many of you that have joined with us in Global Assembly once before. We're so happy to have each of you today. What I want to do, Roundtable, is I want to ask you to briefly and rather quickly present who you are and why you've decided to come here to join in Global Assembly with us today. We'll begin with Trina. It's good to see you again.
Good morning. So my name is Trina L. Hill, and why this is important to me is, to be quite frank, I am a woman. I am a Black woman. I am a woman of color. I'm a woman of a certain age. And the more and more I matriculate through the healthcare system, AI becomes more and more important as my providers provide care for me, but also as I leverage my technology lens in that experience.
Thank you so much.
That's why I'm here today. Thanks for having me.
We're very happy to have you. Medea.
Hi everyone, I'm Madiha Shakil Mirza. I'm an artificial intelligence engineer at Avanade. I'm based in Chicago, and I'm very excited to join you all today at GatherVerse Women's Health Summit. As a woman and as an AI engineer, I'm passionate about developing solutions that benefit all women around the world. And that's why I decided to join you here today. And thank you so much, Christopher, for offering us a platform to express our concerns, share our experiences, so we can all work together to build a future where AI benefits all women.
Thank you, Medea. We're grateful for the opportunity to be here and assemble with you as such. Michael.
Hello, Christopher, and hello to my esteemed panel. Hi, Trina, Medea, and Key. I am 20 years in the medical distribution, logistics, and research space, and I have seen firsthand how technology can improve women's health. So I'm here today to give examples of that. I'm also going to touch on how technology can impact the success or failure of women's healthcare development. I've seen that firsthand here in Ireland, which I'll elaborate on a little bit about some cytology screening a couple of years ago, where detection was not identified in the correct manner. So that'll be one of the areas I'll be touching on in our panel talk today, in terms of the pros and the cons of our use of technology in making sure that we get the deliverables we want to see. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, Michael. We're delighted to have you. Key.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Key. Of course, I'm here because I'm always excited to be at these summits. If I could never miss one, I wouldn't. But first of all, I'm here because definitely, of all things, I'm a woman. Second of all, I've been in healthcare also for 25 years. So I enjoy being in spaces where I can not only gain knowledge, but also provide some of my expertise at the same time. So that is why I am here today, and nice meeting everyone.
Key, it's very, very joyous to have you here with us once again in Global Assembly. Thank you, Roundtable panelists, for being able to join us on this excursion. Permit me to be able to set the stage so that we can continue to move forward. There's a lot that's going to be said. We'd ask that you would answer your questions in a good but yet hurried, if you will, cadence to be able to address so much of what needs to be said and expressed. I'll call upon you, and until then, please mute your mic and let's chop wood. So here's the situation that we find ourselves in right now, that artificial intelligence, it's not new, if you will, but there's been so much that's been expressed and unpacked. And sure, we could be a platform that can spin, as just perhaps today is long, talking about large language foundational models and small models, agentics, which is just so buzzy, and start talking about all the other different things that really make up the capacity of the models that we're using today, whether we're dealing with chain of thought reasoning, extended chain of thought reasoning, larger context windows, various protocols, so forth and so on, and perhaps we will. But I want to meet this at this intersection, as it's stated. When we start thinking about healthcare, we start thinking about wellness. We know that there's platforms right now, this day, this morning, this afternoon, where you find yourself around the world, metropolitan, transcontinental, that are gearing up. They're working with doctors and medical practitioners and nurses and specialists right now, training these models to be able to be proficient and operating within emergency situational systems and more. And part of the justification for this is we time after time here in various and many places around the world, there's simply not enough health practitioners to be able to address the world when it comes to treating those that are ill and those that are of disease, if you will. And so looking at the capabilities of these models, they can now see, they can now speak, they can now hear, they can now address situations medically. Some people get great advice from AI today, dare I say, with a grain of salt. I would say to be cautious of that for anyone that is, because we know that AI is extraordinary when it comes to telling a fib or two. But here's where I want to lean in with this before we address the question on the stage. When you're looking at this vertical of artificial intelligence and health specific, from your area of expertise, what is the most pressing thing that we need to know of that you're looking at that has not been addressed, that should be addressed in rather urgency when it comes to this? And then there's a follow-up with that. Trina, please.
Yeah, so I'll say quickly from a technology, I'll give you the technology answer and then the personal answer. So from a technology perspective, I'm going to say resiliency and governance. So number one, we will implement AI, we're going to leverage it, we're going to depend on it, but then if it goes away, right, if your servers crash, right, the electricity goes out in your data center or in the cloud, as most folks call it, right, what are you going to do? So that's one issue. From a governance perspective, yeah, the models are there, but when were the last time did you look at them? You've implemented them or you've now pushed out agents. When was the last time that you looked at, are they still doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are you governing them? Are they impacting the health of the individuals? Are we seeing greater risk? Are we seeing greater deaths? Are you governing what you've now implemented? From a personal perspective, what concerns me is the people that are coding these models. Do they look like me? Do they talk to me? Have they created a space where they have diverse perspectives? Or quite frankly, are there a bunch of men who are going in a room that have no knowledge of my background, no knowledge of anything that a woman really goes through? Sure. And someone's told them to code something that will impact women's lives as they continue to matriculate through the healthcare system. So those are my top three.
Trina, we're going to get back and address that. You're spot on with much of this when it comes to the narrative of the question I asked. And I rather feel it's a perfect time of day to bring you in, being that you're an engineer, being that you inherently deal with data scientists by nature of what it is that you do. Let's address some of these things, please.
Yeah, so one of the things that AI, one of the positive things that AI is bringing to women's health is that traditionally women's healthcare was focused only on women's reproductive health. But women's health is so much more. Women's health encompasses mental, physical, social well-being, and all of these are interconnected. And one positive thing is that AI understands this interconnectedness because it's trained on advanced algorithms. So it takes into account the entire picture. It understands women's whole bodies instead of just a particular part of a woman's body. So that's one of the positive benefits that AI is bringing to women's health. Regarding the governance, regarding the limitations, is that AI models are only as good as the data they're trained on. So if the data they're trained on is incomplete or biased, it can have disastrous consequences, fatal outcomes, misdiagnosis, wrong treatments. And one of the reasons for bias in women's healthcare, as Trina mentioned, like, do the people who are developing the solutions, do they look like us? Do they understand us? So until 1993, FDA did not allow women to participate in clinical trials. So historically, the data that AI models were trained on was based on male physiology, and it did not consider women's entire body, women's need, the overall picture of a woman's health. So that's one of the limitations of AI in women's health. So to address that, we need developers that understand women's the entire perspective of a woman's health. And we need more women developers. We need more women software engineers. We need more women in the AI sector so they can develop solutions that benefit women, all women.
I find that rather fascinating. As a follow-up, Medea, when you express that AI does know women's bodies, I start to think about the structures and its properties, the anatomical structures of the human body, if you will, and the fact that we know that doctors are still practicing, that they haven't even completely found and wrapped their minds around the capacity of the human body itself. Is there any concern that you have with that translating towards engineers, if you will, and more data scientists getting in the room? Must the relationship extend further, perhaps to the layman, the laywoman, and those that are in the medical field as well?
Concerns regarding
understanding the human body itself when it comes to training the data sets that it can be programmed and managed by the data engineers.
So I think we need updated clinical data sets. We need physicians' input in how the models are being trained. And one of the things that's happening is these medical colleges, these medical schools, these universities, they're involving physicians, they're involving physician assistants, they're involving doctors, nurses, and healthcare research. And they're getting their input in the data sets that are used to develop these AI models. These are artificial intelligence apps, artificial intelligence models. Now, software developers, software engineers, AI engineers, they are working in tandem with healthcare professionals to make sure that their perspective, their consideration, their concerns, their experiences, they're taken into account while building the solutions, while developing the solutions. So we just don't have written data. We just don't want data from clinical studies. We want data from real life. We want data from people who practice in the field, who see things firsthand, who see things in real time. So this is one of the good things that is happening, is that healthcare professionals are being involved in AI development. So the solutions we are building has perspective from people who see these situations in real life, who treat these diseases, who diagnose these diseases, who provide treatments. So that's one of the good things that's happening recently.
Fantastic to hear, and I'm thankful that you brought and expressed the need for updated clinical data sets. And there will be some follow-up with that, because I'm thinking on now the narrative that when they are dealing with doctors and medical practitioners, Michael, when we see this happening in this space, is collaboration, if you will, not only with the human, but machine collaboration with the capacity of these deep research models and what they're capable of doing. And you come from a space where you've already mentioned that things can go wrong. Surely that will. And so while Medea is expressing to the upside, which we embrace, if you will, hopefully it's embraced. Michael, what are you seeing on the flip side of that and complement?
So I think here's the juxtaposition, Chris, and to the panel. The benefits are quite obvious and can be startling, in the sense of an ability to look at analyzing medical information, making diagnostics, supporting healthcare in clinical trials. And I think Medea made the point about data and the lack of data. I mean, the irony is, as I was pointed out, clinical trials per se, and it's quite a generalization of the assessment of the space up until 1993, had a male orientation towards the results, and the women element of that and the subcategories was seen as a struggle. Fast forward 25, 30 years, and that landscape has changed. And in fact, to Trina's point, in terms of looking at those in the space. I would say from my work at CoolReach, and we're very involved in clinical trial and logistics and development and research, supporting companies in this area, is that many of the people we work with are women, analysts, scientists, data analysts. One springs to mind, Mairead Fleming, a phenomenal leader from European Biological Data Center. So there is a lot of work being done around improving the data sets when it comes to adaptability and use of AI. But I do start again with that caveat of awareness of how the data is materialized into usability factors. So that's the area that there's very stern reviews happening in terms of the efficiency and the efficacy of the data sets from the algorithms and everything that's being inputted is going to bring us the type of diagnostic results. Again, I mentioned ovarian cancer, i.e. cytology as a therapeutic area. So there are various other streams of the cancer areas that the question still remains: will AI present us with the core, absolute categoric results that we want to see in terms of KPIs, key performance indicators, for a clinical study protocol, or just regular day-to-day checks?
Sure.
And that is the part of the conversation as we're having today, and that I'm quite fascinated by.
Michael, let me ask you this before we go too far on the miles on the highway here. When you say that we want to see, when we start talking about these KPIs, who are setting the key performance indicators? Who is setting the focal point? Who are those people and those that are setting these benchmarks and standards that so-called represent all of us, please?
Yeah, so I mean, I started my opening remarks around looking at a case study. There was a challenge here in Ireland, and a wonderful lady who sadly is no longer with us, Vicky Phelan, had received results of absolutely 100% okay test results from basic cervical check tests in 2011. And I was involved a little bit in this industry, but that cervical cytology analysis result piece was brought to a other entity, not in Ireland, where automation of the actual test, so from the papillomavirus smear test, where advancements have been made in the ability to extract the cells for screening purposes in an automated system. In fact, there was obviously errors made within that because smear screen checks were unfortunately missed. And Vicky was one of a few ladies who had unfortunately suffered from these misinterpretations. So therefore, when it comes to looking at AI from a medical standpoint, and for practitioners and across cancerous research teams all across the globe, or other areas of therapeutic importance for women, that part of the jigsaw for me is what we're all striving to seeing as we can absolutely hedge, not so much bets on it, but that what we will see from AI will produce and improve. Because if it can't give us that, well then that's where we have to have very strict regulatory systems in place and to ensure that specific types of testing are done from a diagnostic perspective.
Michael, I'm glad that you've left it there, and we'll pick that back up. We will pick that back up, because I start thinking about, we're talking about ethical governance structures, but then I'm thinking about the universality of AI and how it doesn't have any limits and bounds, if you will. It's not tethered to geographic central locations. It's not fenced, if you will, Key. When I start thinking about how widespread and this hyperscale development of this accelerated fashion in which we're innovating and developing, and I think about that, Michael, because I know here in the United States we have HIPAA compliancy, but I know that in South Korea, Seoul, if you will. That means nothing to them to that degree. They have their own standards. And the universality of AI and these models that are being widely adopted. If I'm sitting here adopting DeepSeek, for example, that's made in China, will it have the attention to detail, even if it's open source and democratized access, and someone's white labeling in a hospital in Ohio or here in California? What ramifications might I have that it's not built with ethical governance structures? It's not HIPAA compliant. It doesn't have the safety and parameters, but we'll address that in just a little bit. Key, I'm rounding over to you. When I think about who are the people that are rendezvousing and bringing, as Medea said, bringing these doctors and nurse practitioners with the real need to be able to update the clinical data set, the medical data set. Who are these people that are being routed in? We can ask that. But at the same time, I do want to address that question that's on the stage. What concerns exist regarding the bias in the AI healthcare models when diagnosing and treating women, as Michael had just led off? How apropos for us to be able to pass the baton to you. What are your concerns with this, Key? Or the
Sure. Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. A lot of the concerns that we have are delayed diagnoses. We all know that AI fails to recognize conditions that can be disproportionately affecting in women, such as autoimmune diseases and heart disease, which is very, very common and important that we address. So also racial and socioeconomic biases, especially in Black and brown women. We face higher misdiagnosis rates due to the lack of the diverse data sets, and of course we don't want to keep harping on that about the underrepresentation in data sets, but these models are trained basically mostly by males.
And can I just say that on top of that real quick? I have to say it. When we talk about the diverse data sets in data, let's also talk about the lack of diverse data sets here with the people that are actually in the room and the practitioners themselves. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Absolutely. But yeah, like I was saying, we don't want to keep harping on that. But, the data sets basically are trained by males, which, leads to misdiagnoses, in women. And also the gendered pain biases. AI models may reinforce existing biases where women's pain is often dismissed, and not only dismissed, but undertreated. So, but I can talk about some solutions to reduce that also, and we can ensure that the AI is trained on inclusive data sets that represent women of all ages and races, and also the socioeconomic backgrounds. And also the bias audits and regulations. AI healthcare tools should undergo mandatory testing for gender biases before they are actually deployed. And the inclusion of women in AI development, more women in AI leadership. We need that so we can continue to shape ethical and unbiased technology.
Thank you for sharing that, Key, and those specific points. We'll pick up some of that as we route over to Samaya. We greet you, Samaya. We know that you're late to the stage, but you're certainly not a stranger to the GatherVerse community. Briefly, please introduce yourself in the quickest of fashions and why you arrived, and then I'll follow up with a quick question to you, and then Michael, Medea, Trina, Key. We have a lot more to unpack here. Samaya, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So I lead product and technology teams for global startups, and I have worked with Fortune 100 companies as well. And I also do research in computational biology, biotechnology, bioengineering, and biotech. So that's a little bit about myself. Chris, would you like me to answer this question as well, which we are discussing on the stage right now?
I have a specific question for you, Samaya, that I just want to squarely be able to route in with you. Let's talk about this for a second. From your lens perspective and from the things that you're already working on with the other different ambitious projects, we've had opportunities to talk about this, but let's look from the value as a woman. Do you have a concern with the power of what we see happening at the scalability at which the pace that we see AI coming to the scene? Do you have a concern, or do you have a solution to be able to address to the world, or perhaps even a question when it comes to the application of what AI could do, what prospectively it could be in the medical theater as we know it today and perhaps tomorrow?
Sure. I would like to say that building on what Key and Michael has just said, I think at the speed which AI is evolving at this point in time, we have to be very mindful that AI models are as good as the data input to them. So if the data input to them is biased, for example, as Key and Michael pointed out, pointed out, or if the data itself is not clean enough, or it's not, like I would say, in the form which is required for the AI model to perform, to provide a certain outcome, then the AI model is not reliable or efficient or effective in itself. So I think we have to be very mindful about two factors here, that when we say that AI models are evolving at an exponential pace, which they but are they evolving to come up with the required outcomes in an effective and efficient manner? That's first question, which we all need to ask as industry practitioner. And the second question I would like to address from a researcher point of view, when I do my research in computational biology or biotechnology or bioengineering or bioinformatics, and I get it published, the biggest challenge which we face in that research is that what Key has mentioned, we don't even have data for most women. Like women of color and black and brown women, they are even a more minority subset within a bigger women group. But most of the data in healthcare or health tech, whatever you want to call it, or computational biology, it's available on men. So if, for example, you are trying to write something, or you are trying to do a research on something to build an AI model, for example, on breast cancer cells, which I do pretty often, we don't even have data for women to an extent, or to a number, or to a amount, or to a quantity which we need to train our AI model. So the question here is that if the data is not available for women, then, as Key rightly pointed out, if most of the researchers and implementers or practitioners are men themselves, and then finally the AI trainers are mostly men as well. So
Sure.
then the question here is how accurate the outcome of that AI model is. And I
That's
will leave the rest of the speakers and our audiences with that question, and we can answer that throughout this session.
Shemai, I think that's brilliant on so many different fronts. I sit here and listen under the sound of your voice, and each of you, rather, on what you're expressing. There's a study that's happening in the UK with, I believe, 4,000 women to undergo breast cancer screening with just a test to be able to even understand what is the best approach to even be able to challenge this and to tackle this. And I'm glad to hear this is the case. But to come off the heels of what you're saying, Samaya, over to you, Trina, is look, the reality is there's going to be companies tonight and tomorrow that are saying, we're ready. AI is completely ready to infiltrate the healthcare sector as we know it. It's completely ready. It's well prepared. And the reality is that it's not ready. Just as many doctors and practitioners, as Keith talked about, misdiagnosing, they're not as ready and as equipped as they want to be. Mind you, doing their best, if you will. We want to support our frontline workers to the best that we can. But at the same time, we want to be able to give credence to allow those that may imbibe, if you will, whether on the practitioner level, private, whether in the public sector, whether on general practitioner, if you will, that these machines aren't as ready and prepared as we know it yet. Now, here's the route in, Trina. Based on this question that's on the screen, I'm here in Silicon Valley. OpenAI, Anthropic, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google. As much as I enjoy these platforms, I know that many of those people could care less of when it comes to the equality, if you will, of women's health and who's in the room that are actually building these capable and powerful models, whether it's AWS, Bedrock, or what have you. My concern is, how do we even let them here? Because right now, they're in a global AI arms race, building as fast as they can. How do we keep them whole?
Yeah, so number one, I think that there is power inside of those organizations. So number one, I would say for the women that are sitting in those organizations that have a voice, and I'm not going to even just say from women in technology, I'm going to say women that are on the business side of those companies as well. Because the reality is that's where the money happens. The money does not happen in technology. By the time the money trickles down to technology, the business folks have already had a conversation around the business case for leveraging AI to solve this particular problem, right? Or to provide this particular service or product. So number one, I think the women in those organizations must say to their leaders, hey, I know we're implementing this, but did we talk to women? Can we leverage the women that are inside of our company to feed data into AI if those women are willing to do that? So number one, I think that the women in your house, you need to listen to. So that's number one. Number two, I think as consumers, we need to ask the question, who built it? When did they build it? And how can we trust it? Because you know, and I know people are not going to use things they don't trust.
Sure.
Right. And it's not us. We're not the ones that are typically in the rooms where AI is always being discussed. It's typically, it could be my mother who's in her 70s and her doctor's talking fast and he's leveraged this data. He's going to say, yeah, I have this new computer tool that told me exactly what's wrong with you. She doesn't know enough to ask the question. She doesn't know. She's just going to take it because she doesn't understand. And she's just going to trust her doctor.
Trina, let me follow up with that too.
Yeah.
And these models are so convincing to allow you to believe that they are trustworthy.
Correct.
What are we equipped with to be able to validate the ground truth of whether they're trustful or not? Please.
I think we have to understand that when we walk into any healthcare facility that we own our health. And it is our responsibility to ask questions and not to just automatically take what the doctor says. And it's also our right to tell a doctor, I do not want you to leverage AI in order for you to diagnose me. Or if you are leveraging AI, I want you to tell me what it gave you in addition to what are you bringing to this diagnosis. We cannot remove people from the experience of healthcare. And I know AI is great and AI is big. And I'm not saying AI does not have a place, because I definitely see the benefits, but we cannot remove human experience in this. Because again, I may be an outlier. I may be that one person. The AI says the diagnosis is supposed to be XYZ. And I may be that one person because of my genetics that's an outlier. And that one diagnosis could cause you to potentially kill me by giving me the wrong medication, right? And so the thing let me round it out by saying this. Women that are in these organizations, they need to make sure that they're speaking up. If they have a seat at the table, they need to use it. They need to use their voice, and then they figure out how can they impact the data sources that are being built, these models that are being built in the organizations, whether it be on the technology side or the business side. Right? Because here's the reality. Those decisions are going to impact our health, maybe not today, but down the road. The second thing is we should ask, how are you getting this diagnosis? Where did this data come from?
Sure.
And then we need to advocate for ourselves if we want you to leverage the data. If I were to go into surgery today, I have a choice as to have a human do surgery on me or to have a bot do it. I'm going to ask for a human every time. And the only reason is I would rather have your experience than a computer that could fail and you may not even know it failed until you've killed me.
You know what's fascinating about that? I think what we just uncovered here, panel, and Medea, we're about to route over to you, and just wait for this 2 tons just to come over and drop in your lap. But let's unpack that. Let's get closer for a second on that, what Trina just expressed. Because on one hand, there is need for more data. I think that we've all agreed that there's more need for women's data. At the same time, there are those that are building out these data sets with, going back to what you actually said, Medea, and scaling up the clinical data set. But there are those that have concern. What are you doing with my data? Who is going to be the keeper and the handling of my data, as Samaya is addressing as well? What about my sovereign identity, if you will, my anatomical data, my personal data? And when I ingress into an environment of a hospital setting with 29 different departments, roughly, if you will, in there, and Michael, you'll be able to address on this in just a second as well. When I step into this environment, Medea, when that real-time experience, let's say a VJEP, a world model is happening, when that experience is happening, who owns my living data when I ingress into an environment is the first concern that I want us to address, Medea, if we can. And then second, when it comes to the need for more women's data, if we don't have the necessary safety and ethical boundaries of privacy, who would want to volunteer their data in the first place? The tech companies could say. And so it seems like we have a bit of an impasse, if you will, that there's a need for more data, but there's also a need for more trust standards for us to want to be able to submit our data, or for women, if you will, and men to submit their data to these people that are building out the models. Doctors, we have more trust with to a degree. Technologists, you're asking me to do the same thing that I would do for a doctor? I don't know about that. Medea.
Yeah, so I would like to share a very interesting example. So, following the overturning of Roe v. Wade, concerns arose that apps that collect and store personal reproductive health data, such as menstrual tracking apps, there were like news reports that these apps could be bought, sold, or accessed by law enforcement to prosecute anyone seeking or considering an abortion. Um, and this led to many women deleting these apps because of the concerns that your private, your sensitive healthcare data can be sold so openly without your explicit consent. um, and then another concern is that some AI powered health apps, they have been found sharing user data with advertisers or third party companies, even when they download the app and they explicitly say that I do not want my data to be shared. Still, some of these apps have been found selling this user data, and users don't even know about that. Um, and so I feel like to protect women's privacy, policymakers must enforce strict data protection regulations that specifically prohibit the sale of reproductive health data. And also, there should be stringent laws that require companies to implement end to end encryption. And women, like, we should also be vigilant in reviewing app privacy policies and choosing apps with strong data security measures. But there are just so many concerns, like our private data, which we feel like we are safe while using these apps or AI systems. We feel that we are safe, but at the background, we don't know what's happening with our data. We don't know like who in the world has access to our personal data.
That's right. As I hear on the heels of what you just said, if you'll permit me to piggyback on that just for a second, Michael, we'll route over to you, then Key, Samaya, you're next. Let's talk about that for a second. We've been scrolling for years now, and the disclaimer in the box that we hurry up and click to so that we can get to whatever new app that we're about to use. And we just submitted our data to Google in dramatic ways. We've seen what the Zuckerbergs and the Googles of the world have done with our data. Now we're talking about our bodies. It's one thing to the thumb scroll and for it to know where I'm going and navigating. It's a whole nother thing to understand internally and externally my body, the health, if you will, this machine, if I could put it like that. I have a bit of concern with that. Yet at the same time, Medea, you talked about policy, having that balance. But we now know in this AI arms race, and I have it on good authority, Meta, they've dramatically let go of so many of their policy people. Microsoft, they dramatically have fired so many of their policy people. Google and all these other platforms, I can't speak to them, but I can speak to the ones that I know have, that they've been asked on live camera, that it's been expressed. So when we think about traditional checks and balances of applications and technology and data sovereignty and privacy, I now have a real accountability concern, needless to say, of those that are in OpenAI Anthropic. What are you building and who's keeping the checks and balances when all your safety people are dropping out like left and right, bowing out? What is it that they're seeing and what is it that you're not permitting and letting them to do when it comes to the safety of the people deploying these massive models, especially when we know now that President Trump is in the White House? This isn't political, this is a fact, that the regulatory and the safety parameter thresholds have now been left to the states here in the United States. I can't speak to that elsewhere. When it comes to the European Union Act, some say it's too stringent and they don't allow for innovation and growth. I think we have a lot of stuff to sort through, Michael, when it comes to this. What are you seeing there in Ireland on this subject?
Yeah, Chris, I mean, I think I'll bring it to a more macro level, and just for our listeners and our audience, just to be reassured, the healthcare industry and the clinical space, whether you're a sponsor, be it a large company or a small and mid-sized biotech, everybody is very conscious of data. We can't sit here and say that the efficacy of running a clinical trial and making sure that that all hits the correct criteria and milestones, and data protection forms a very important key part of it. So there is a very wide acceptance at a macro level of the protection of patients' data. How it's secured, how it's minded, we would see in protocols of clinical trials one of the first documents would be the Data Protection Agreement. So you'd have a DPA. It's standard across the industry. So across the world, there's a conscious understanding that the data sets of privacy to an individual are absolutely vital to the running of a clinical trial. I mean, let's remember, getting a drug to market can be anything from 150 million to multiple billions. So ensuring data privacy within AI, decision making of healthcare, is very much looked at from a ethics perspective. So I think that's important to distinguish.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing that. That, believe it or not, brings a little bit of comfort that to know that there are those health organizations. And look, all of us have met some comfort in hospitals. I would like to hope that we have that our frontline workers that work so judiciously as hard as they do and so desperate sometimes to get necessary support, especially in a terrible time where we see research and scientists being dismissed quicker than I ate pancakes yesterday, if I ate them. But what I'm saying is that we see this happening in this world, Key, and we would like to think that everyone is held accountable and have their own standards within these organizations. But it seems to me that might this be an opportunity for us to start thinking about decentralization and the fact that maybe we should start looking at autonomous and being necessarily not too reliant on the different systems that are within these organizations, but can we bring it closer to home? You know, ladies and gentlemen, there was a time where there's a doctor that used to knock on your door and come do a hospital visit. But then someone had the big idea to be able to have the exact opposite effect, to ingress people in these large buildings and these fortifications for you to go and leave your home, whether you're feeling miserable or not, and to be able to go in these environments. But there was times they were able to treat you. I could imagine a world sooner rather than later where we have the necessary devices to be able to run our vitals and to be able to have doctors, practitioners come and join us. But even in a robotic field, as we see that coming up, Key, is this a time for us to explore new ways of how we navigate and when we start thinking about the medical theater as a whole, and who all has a seat at that table from at least your lens, Key?
I will say yes, but then I will say no, because there's nothing like the human intuition, the human touch. You know, AI cannot and should not ever replace your doctor, the doctor's experience, you know, the critical thinking, and of course, patient interaction. Like we want to talk with our doctor. We want to feel with our, feel our doctor. We always want that, the human interaction. And, we want to see we don't want to just see the nurses. We want to see our doctor face when we come out of surgery.
Key, I have to ask. So if there's a surgery that's happening with the Da Vinci machine, and there's a doctor that's in Costa Rica operating a Da Vinci machine, let's say here in Lucille Children's Packard Hospital in Stanford,
right?
And she is commanding this machine. She's operating, but it's the machine that's helping with the precisions. Let's say gestural interface, point cloud precision, everything goes smooth. Has a great track record. Mm-hmm. Are you still going to be hesitant in using and having that machine give you surgery?
Absolutely, I will. I'm sorry, it just have to be me personally. I can't speak for other patients. Me personally, it would have to be a life or death situation.
That's very interesting that you leave it at that, because I think that some people, especially in this world where we saw COVID-19, we saw the long lines in New York. We saw the great amount of people that expired in so many different situations. Absolutely. And a lot of that was because we were ill prepared to be able to take on this challenge. And at the same time, we certainly didn't have enough caregivers and practitioners to be able to address this situation. Samaya, let me route over to Samaya, and then we'll pick this back up. We'll go over lightning rounds for the next round. Thank you, Keith, for that. And thank you for your transparency of thought and honesty. And Samaya, when you think about this from this lens, let's kind of piece this all together. Audience, do you feel comfortable with the machine giving you an operation? I'd like for you to not only just to address any question box that you may find yourself in with GatherVerse. We have many scattered around. But ask yourself, ask a neighbor, ask a friend, how do you feel about that? Samaya, what are your thoughts extending?
Chris, on that, I would say that the augmentation of human physicians or doctors or healthcare workers along with AI models would be the best model going further. I don't think that people will be very comfortable completely or solely relying on AI models or AI diagnostic systems, diagnosing them, or at the same time doing surgeries on them or providing any type of treatments. And on that, there are two aspects of policing which I would really like to bring together, because you mentioned very pertinent points earlier in the conversation when you talk about the data privacy, that people, and specifically women, are not comfortable providing their data when it comes to very personal healthcare challenges, just because of the privacy concerns. So you rightly mentioned like some of the big tech industry names, that how the data has been leaked in the recent past. But I would also like to bring your attention to another policy um, facet or aspect of it, and I would like to give example of China here. So China is currently leading in the AI race. They have built a social system where you can bring someone's personal data, demographical data, their educational background, their family history, their medical history, as well as their social uh, history, and their like all different type of data could be put in one place, and then they assign a rank to an individual. So what's happening on the basis of that rank, that government is now controlling that who will get into what job, who will date who will get married to someone else, and this is happening while the policy is there. So it's another facet of policing the AI system, that if we will have this type of system in North America, do you think that people would be willing to go into that system or provide their data for that system? Because I don't want any government to control to tell me that which job should I go to, who I date, who I should marry to, and then on the basis of, because we're talking about women health here, on the basis of my health, because health is a very personal thing for any individual, and specifically for women, given a lot of different uh, I wouldn't say even illnesses. I would say a lot of different conditions which are associated with women life cycle. Like when a woman is hits the puberty, and then during the reproductive ages, and then afterwards menopause, and so on and so forth. I would not like any government or any entity controlling my access to job, my access to different location, my access to my dating partners, my access to my um, long time partners, on the basis of my health data or any other type of data. So we have to be very mindful, because this is currently happening in China. And as you rightly said, Chris, earlier, that we are now in a race, and it's a geographical race, it's a geopolitical race, and of course it's a race among different giants in the industry as well. So in this race, I don't know like how mindful these big tech companies are to consider these type of aspects and facets, because when, as a researcher on one end, and as a practitioner or implementer or product builder on the other end, when I try to bring the two worlds together, I often hear from people, and specifically from women, well, I don't want to share my data voluntarily because I don't want to be controlled by any big tech or entity or government. So I think these are really pertinent questions. I'm not saying that I have all the answers right now, because it's evolving, but this stage or this group, I think, is a very good place to start questioning and to start bringing awareness to these questions, and bringing all the like information from different geographies together in one place, and to see what's working, what's not working. Because if this would be like in North America, or if in Europe, it would be this authoritarian on the basis of our data, I don't think so that people will be comfortable providing the data, or that could result in some sort of revolution as well. Like, because people will be like, I don't want to be controlled by the government or entity like a
Sure,
big.
Samaya, we're going to have to put a hold on that. I feel like we could just have a part 2 right now. Say, forget the schedule. We're just forget. Sorry, everyone, but I want to go with I want to extend this for another hour, but I want to close this out. Thank you so much, Samaya, for bringing that up. There's so much, to my surprise, that's what's been said already here at this roundtable audience of what's been expressed. I want to take a quick 30-second round robin, Trina, Key, Medea, and Michael, for you just to follow up 30 quick or less seconds on how do you want to end this? What do you need to say to us? What should be said to us so that we can get out of here and start working on these next roundtables that are here? Trina.
Yes. So the one thing I will say is AI is a tool. It is not meant to replace people. When it comes to healthcare, we can leverage both for the benefit of all, but we also need all at the table to create AI.
Agreed. Thank you. Michael. Your mic, sir.
Chris, I mean, again, as I started, I will begin with that, end with that piece, if you will, around detection, right? So, Tricia Greenhalgh was a medical professor in Oxford University, talked about an AI scanner, looking at a normal mammogram, and yet when it was really checked out, in fact, the particular lady in question had issues. So, what we have to be careful with is detection can be done where we are giving AI the clinician's expertise for intelligent questions to support the success. As Trina said, AI is a tool. It's not the end result to bring all we need to see. It is there to be used in the correct and ethical and clinical fashion.
Thank you, Michael. Key.
Absolutely. I just want to say AI has the potential to revolutionize women's healthcare, but responsible development, ethical safeguards, and human oversights are very crucial to what's going on, for to be fair, accurate, and inclusive healthcare solutions. And at the end of the day, remember, like Trina said, AI is just a tool. You control AI. Don't let AI control you.
Fair enough, Key. Thank you so much. Medea.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, as Trina said, as Key said, at the end of the day, even the best, most advanced AI model, it's just a technology. And health requires human judgment and contextual understanding. And that can only be provided by healthcare professionals. But we need healthcare professionals that receive specialized training to interpret AI generated insights. So we need human judgment, human expertise to empower AI models. And we need advanced AI models to empower healthcare professionals at diagnosis. And regulatory frameworks should mandate human oversight in AI-driven medical decision making. And we as consumers should also be concerned about our data privacy, and we should advocate for laws that protect rights, that protect data rights, that protect healthcare rights for all women, everyone around the world.
Thank you so much, Medea. Panel, roundtable. Permit me to end with this. We talk about winners and losers of the AI race, but to me, everyone's lost until that country, that continent finds the best applicable use for AI at the intersection of human betterment. And until then, we're all losing and rarely anyone's winning at this moment. But this roundtable just showed me who's leading the true narrative of artificial intelligence. Thank you so much, Roundtable. Our gather was well.